Okay, everybody, thank you for tuning in to another Global from Asia podcast. It's actually another guest. I feel like lately we're probably getting some guests that have been on the list for a while and making it happen. Gary Huang, he's the founder of the Seven Figure Seller Summit, which I was actually a participant of this last one, and also doing other amazing things in this business. As always, thanks for being here, Gary.
Oh, thanks for having me, Mike. It's a pleasure to finally be on. I'm super excited.
Yeah, I know. I mean, we've been talking about it. I know you check out some of the shows and everything, so it's really great to have you sharing with us. Do you want to introduce yourself for listeners a little bit about what you?
Yeah, definitely. So my name is Gary Huang. I'm the founder of the Seven Figure Seller Summit. I also run a site called 80/20 Sourcing, where I offer best practices with sourcing, especially for e-commerce sellers. Um, just quick background about myself. I was born and raised in the US. I'm from LA originally. I like to say I was made in the USA and then I was exported to China. So I moved out to Shanghai in 2008 and I stumbled upon a job in a small consulting firm working in sourcing. So eventually I moved up the ladder and I became the director of the sourcing department there. So I handled multi-million-dollar sourcing campaigns for clients. So I visited hundreds of Chinese factories. So I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly. And I also, after you know, one thing led to another. Started a family, got married, started a family, and then I decided the next step to do my own business. And then that's when I launched 80/20 Sourcing. And I also have an e-commerce background. This might be a little confusing because the timing is out of order, but before I moved to Shanghai, '05, I started out selling on eBay. This was back in the US. So at that time, eBay was like today's Amazon. Like they were the 800-pound gorilla. I went to like eBay conferences, like eBay Live. So basically, that's how I got my feet wet in e-commerce from '05 to '08. But I stopped selling on e-commerce in '08 because of the financial crisis and because I moved to China. But after my work in sourcing, I saw that, hey, this Amazon thing, it's blowing up. I did some of that before, so I started selling on Amazon. So I'm Amazon seller myself as well. So I've got some skin in the game. So Seven Figure Seller Summit is basically, I really love that quote by Jim Rohn. He said, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with," right? So the first summit that I launched in 2018, at that time, my wife was about 7 months pregnant with our first child, with our son. So I couldn't go to Hong Kong to these in-person events. So I figured, why not invite these experts, these seven-figure sellers, to me and virtually online, and everybody else to teach them how they did it. So that's kind of the genesis behind the Seven Figure Seller Summit. It was pretty successful. I mean, I learned a lot personally. We had several thousand people view online, and then we launched the second Seven Figure Seller Summit earlier this year in 2020, and then Mike was on it. He gave a great talk about best practices with selling e-commerce businesses, how to maximize your selling price. So sorry for the long-winded intro, but that's kind of my story. Yeah.
Well, it kind of intertwines into what we're talking about today. We've been preparing for the show, and you gave us some great points. I'm sure listeners are going to enjoy a lot. Is after interviewing and work, these few seven-figure seller summits you've done and talking to these sellers, you're going to share some of your highlights, which I'm even excited to hear about. So that's it fits together. It kind of flows right into our topic for today. So thanks for that, Gary.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I'm super excited. And then I just prepared some talking points because I interviewed over 20 seven-figure e-commerce sellers and experts. So I kind of noticed some common themes after talking to these guys. So I kind of wanted to share some of these with you guys today. So Mike, just let me know. Yeah.
Maybe you gave me a great list. Maybe I could kind of read it off. Maybe I could kind of modify it or comment on
Definitely.
it. We can have a conversation. So
Cool.
The first one, which I love, actually, especially during this COVID nightmare and other global events, successful entrepreneurs get around excuses. So
Definitely. Yeah.
that's
So, I mean,
I love to
this
hear.
is like, yeah, for sure. This is like, the Seven Figure Seller Summit was split up into 5 days with different themes for every day. So for day one was mindset. So I noticed that a lot of these successful seven figure sellers, they got around excuses because I noticed that, one of the sure things in running a business, and Mike, you know this, like you're always going to face, problems, challenges, you're going to run into the wall 100%, no doubt about it. So I noticed that what sets these seven figure sellers apart is that when they're faced with these trials and tribulations, is that they found ways to get around these excuses. So they didn't throw in the towel. That might have caused some people to fail and give up. So case in point, seven-figure seller Chris Davey, and then he's our mutual friend.
Yeah, this is great.
He shared that one of the excuses and walls that he hit was dealing with European VAT or value added tax. So he said it was a pain in the butt, and with all the bureaucracy and all the administrative work it entails. And then he said that he spends dozens of hours, if not more, fulfilling all of these requirements so that he can legally sell on Amazon European marketplaces. And then on the other hand, some people may have given up if they face these challenges, make the excuse, oh, it's not worth it, or they don't know what to do. But Chris was determined to get around these excuses, and he found a way to get it done. And because of that, he was able to scale his business, and he's doing quite well in Amazon Europe. So the main takeaway is that Chris, in his mindset, he sees these challenges as barriers that keep out his competitors. He doesn't see them as like potential things that stop him. These are barriers that keep out his competitors. And he shared especially competitors from countries like China, where he feels that they probably aren't willing to go through this process. So just the fact that he can go around these excuses, this means that it's more business for him, because a lot of his competitors, they make up excuses, and they're not willing to do the work. And then similarly, another seven-figure seller that I spoke with, Nick Katz, he sells in Amazon Japan and Europe. He revealed that you don't even necessarily have to set foot in the country to sell there. So to learn about cultural differences in Japan, for example, Nick used an example of like Japanese kitchens, which are, designed differently from like Western style kitchens. They're smaller, they have different types of appliances, etc. So he shared that, rather than having to fly to Japan to see these kitchens in person, you can actually learn what a Japanese kitchen looks like by searching on YouTube. You can search for videos of Japanese kitchen. I mean, that is if you want to sell in Japan in the kitchen category, for example. So, don't use that as an excuse. You can use online tools like YouTube. I mean, we didn't have these tools, just like 10 years ago. So I feel that, there's a lot more examples that have room to talk about today here. But I find that one of the top takeaways is that, successful entrepreneurs find ways around excuses, and, they're always finding a way to get things done.
And I think the opposite of that is people that don't succeed always look for an excuse, right? Like,
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we can always find the negative or the problem or the barrier, but I think it's similar. It's another way of saying what you're saying, but barriers is opportunity, right? Because
right,
opportunities. Cool, man.
right.
So getting off Amazon to find products is your second one.
Yeah, I noticed that, what might have worked in 2016 to rank and sell on Amazon doesn't work as well today. Just like the old ways of relying only on research tools to come up with product ideas, when the same, thousands or hundreds of thousands of sellers are using the same tools and the same methodology. So, it's like that saying that goes, if you start out from the same place as everyone else, you end up at the same place as everyone else, right? So, what might look like a profitable product opportunity today can be a flooded market 3-4 months down the line when, hundreds of other competitors are using Jungle Scout, they're using Helium 10 with the same criteria, and, sourcing the same product and shipping them to Amazon's warehouses. And please excuse the background noise. Our baby is here, and, we're sheltering in place. So, I'm not gonna use that as an excuse to
Exactly.
prevent
I was gonna say the exact
podcast.
same thing, man. You're making
exactly,
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, case in point, but going back to getting off of Amazon, I was talking to seven-figure seller Tim Jordan, and then he says that looking on Amazon alone can lead to saturated niches. So instead of looking only on Amazon, Tim uses external sites such as Pinterest, such as CreateJoy to find profitable product ideas and keywords. And Tim shared that he really loves subscription sites, like subscription monthly boxes, like CrateJoy, because they source new and trending products that can be months or even years ahead of mainstream demand found on Amazon. So they're very early in the product life cycle. And if you get on this, very early, you're able to capitalize on the demand before everyone else. So after coming up with these ideas from these external sites, Tim uses research tools such as Helium 10 to check the keyword search volume to make his product decisions. So even though there is early demand for these products, the products are not there yet on Amazon. So, again, he does not start out on Amazon like everyone else, because that means he will be stuck looking at saturated niches. And then another off Amazon site that works very well is Etsy. And then Chris Davey says that he uses Etsy in his product niches to find out what customers are searching for to gauge interest in product demand. And then not only that, Chris Davey also uses Reddit. Like, he goes deep into different subreddits related to his niche to get feedback on new product designs before he manufactures them. So this is kind of like the whole lean startup methodology, like the MVP, the minimum viable product, where you want to invest like the minimum amount of time, the minimum amount of capital in kind of like a hypothetical product in order to test it. And then if you can validate it using substantial user feedback without committing to thousands of dollars, placing a purchase order from China, the months to manufacture and ship it, then you're really shortcutting this process and taking a lot of risks out of the equation. So these are a couple ways that I noticed that the successful seven-figure sellers, they're getting off of Amazon to find product ideas. Yeah. After that, I noticed another theme was the 80-20 rule, right? And then especially with entrepreneurs, one of the biggest pains that we face is the lack of time. So I think Mike, you're in the same boat as me. We have families, we have our businesses, we're traveling, but now we're in lockdown. We're like pivoting. So lack of time is one of our biggest headaches, right? So that's why I was really shocked when I interviewed Jason Vandergrens. He's a seven-figure seller that we featured on the summit. I asked him, Jason, I know you're probably busy, let's set up a time. And he says that, no, man, actually, I'm not busy. He actually, I mean, who says that, right?
Yeah, I never heard
he's a
that.
one-person $1 million business, and then he shared that, he applies the 80-20 rule to decide on what tasks to work on. And then more specifically, he follows, Stephen Covey, who wrote that book, The 7 Habits of Successful People. There's like that, the whole quadrant, right? Like the time management quadrant. And then he really focuses on the non-urgent, important tasks. So this way, he doesn't give them a chance to get bigger. And then this saves some time later. And then, so he really focuses on like the non-urgent but important tasks. Okay. Another seven-figure seller,
Yeah.
Brandon Dubsky, he also built a $1 million one-person business, selling one product and then working 1 hour per day by applying what he calls the big profit formula. So Brandon really focuses on the smarts that make money, and then he outsources the tasks that are moving money. So he shared that the big profit formula is small work times big smarts. Okay, so he really focuses on the smarts and the tasks that make money and outsource the tasks that are moving money. So for example, he'll focus on tasks such as creating videos featuring himself and his children, showing customers how to use their products. And then this helps boost his sales and his brand. And then he'll outsource more of the administrative tasks, the more of the bookkeeping tasks. Okay. And then I also spoke with seven-figure Amazon sellers, Alex and Jerry Mills, and they're a husband and wife duo based in the US. And, they apply the 80-20 rule. They focus on launching new products and optimizing their PPC campaigns, and then outsourcing the rest of their work to free up time. So in other words, they outsource the other tasks that are moving money so they can focus on the smart tasks that are making money and creating big profits. So that's the big profit formula.
That sounds good. So going back to the 80-20, and do you know if some people do it all themselves? So do the others that you talk to, do they have teams? I mean, are these people full-time freelancer? I'm kind of curious myself. I mean, are they, they're probably remote workers online?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, virtually everybody that I spoke with, if they call themselves one person $1 million businesses, they have a team, right? So usually it's a remote team. They could be, VAs in the Philippines. They could have, programmers, in India. They'll have other, like web developers in Eastern Europe, for example. The reason they do that is because of the lower costs. And nowadays, there's even like Google level engineers, that are maybe they don't want to work in Silicon Valley and they return to their home country, right? But they're still working at a very high quality, and then they're willing to work at a level that's acceptable to them, but will be very cheap according to Western standards.
Okay.
So that actually leads us to the next big takeaway that I learned, which is building a superstar team. So when I was traveling in Thailand, in Chiang Mai, I met up with Nate Ginsberg. He's a seven-figure seller, and then he's a digital nomad. He spends a lot of time traveling in Southeast Asia. He sold his Amazon business for nearly $1 million. So when I had asked Nate how he built his business to sell it for almost 7 figures, he said it was because of his superstar team. He couldn't have done it himself. So diving deeper, I found that he really hired for his weaknesses. So Nate is an ideas person, right? So he's not so detail oriented. So he really hired people to kind of fill that gap, to build that team that was detail oriented to make his business stronger. And then I also wanted to dig deeper into learning the benefits of working with a superstar team. And then I learned that your team not only supports you, but you can also learn valuable information from them. So for example, CJ Rosenbaum, he runs a successful law firm to help Amazon sellers protect their brands and get their account back from suspensions. So CJ, based in New York, he meets with his team every day to learn what's working and what's not working, because his team is on the front line with their customers every day. So they're interfacing with their customers, and then his team members know the customers' key pain points and goals. So this information is like super valuable because it helps CJ tailor his services to meet their demands and to grow his business. And then I don't know about you, but one of the flip sides of running a remote team is to motivate them to perform better, because a lot of times we hear stories about VAs that just go AWOL, they disappear, they're not responsive. So I spoke with Mike Jackness. He's a 7-figure seller, and then he runs Ecom Crew, about how he was able to build a relationship with his remote team in the Philippines. So Mike shared that he visits his team of VAs in the Philippines every year and spends time with them in person. So for about a week, he works with them in the same office. He spends time socializing with them, outside of the office over meals, even karaoke and other team building activities. So obviously right now we're in lockdown, but, assuming that things return to semi-normal, this is one of the key ways that, you can help motivate your team to do better. And then similarly, Jason Vandergrant, he visits his team in Europe, and then he even went to celebrate the birth of their children. So, one of the beauties of running an online business is that, Jason's able to make a trip out of it, to travel and run his business at the same time, being an e-commerce entrepreneur. So, building a superstar team, that's critical.
That does sound amazing. I mean, I totally agree with seeing the team in person. Although it happened
Yeah.
right in the middle of lockdown for me this time. I was in the middle of a
Yeah. Yeah.
street when the lockdown happened, but it's for sure night and day when you meet the people. Although I do have to admit, I don't know if some people I talk to are afraid to meet their team because they're afraid that their team will look at them differently. But I don't. I think he's just a shy, introverted person. I definitely think if you're able to meet the people you work with, it's definitely makes working together so much easier and more comfortable for everybody.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that that's universal. I mean, whether your team members are in the Philippines or, in America and especially in China, right? I mean, I feel like, the factories that I source from, they're part of my team. And then, every time I visit them, we have lunch, we break bread. I feel like that just adds to the relationship. So, when something goes wrong, yeah, I don't do baijiu, but it's very popular. But that really enhances things when things go wrong. They'll remember, oh, that's Mike, right? I mean, like he sat down with the boss, they did like the shots, and maybe you'll get better service than like that random guy that only emails them over Alibaba, right? So I think
Agreed.
that just getting some face time, that's really important in building your team.
Totally agreed, man. All right. But yeah, of course, if you can meet the people in person, so I was wondering, do people actually have a physical office? Any of these people, I think, or probably not, right? I mean, I don't
I
know.
would say the minority. I remember talking to Dave Bryant. He's based in, I think, Vancouver, Canada. And he did have a physical office for his previous e-commerce business, but he realized that it was a huge expense. And then it was more, on the cost of goods sold, like on the expense side of the P&L. And then like he cut that office and then he has a remote team now. And then by doing that, he really dropped his expenses. And then that actually boosted the selling price of his business because it increases profitability, based on that multiplier. And you're probably more familiar with that than I am, with
Yeah,
your work, with Alpha Rock. But
sure,
but
sure.
I would say the minority of people have, like a physical office in, where they're based. I mean, assuming they're in like the more expensive countries like the States and Europe.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, that's even with this lockdown, I mean, actually, even this lockdown makes it even more important to work online, right? I mean, if you had all these expensive offices and you can't get to them
Yeah,
right now, it's unfortunately wasted money that you don't have it.
yeah, yeah. And I noticed that some of the seven figure sellers, I spoke to them since after Corona, like Jason Vandergren in Toronto. His business is exploding right now because he's better positioned to work in this type of situation because he worked remotely since before. Whereas some of his competitors, they have, like brick and mortar, like offline
Mhm.
offices, and then those guys are scrambling. But then, on his website, he put up front and center, open for business during COVID-19. And
Nice.
then so he's actually capitalizing on this, just the fact that, he's so experienced, working from home where everyone else, like they're trying to learn Zoom and, all that kind of stuff. So that,
So
it can be an
they don't
advantage.
listen to us
Yeah.
before, right now they're learning.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many great points here. Let's try to get a few more. This is really
Yeah,
amazing.
definitely. Yeah. And then the next thing that I found out, a common theme was building a brand, okay, for your e-commerce business. This is more critical than ever to rank your products, to get reviews. Not only that, but also to sell your business for a higher multiple. Okay,
Mhm.
so building a brand, it's more and more important now, given the increased competition. And then also, I learned that Amazon gives more weight to external traffic that drives sales. Okay, so Dave Huss, he's one of the speakers on the summit. He spent over $400,000 on Facebook ads for his own e-commerce businesses, and then he works with a number of 7 and 8 figure e-commerce sellers to rank their products on page one on Amazon. So in Dave's experience, he shared that building an audience or a list on Facebook, it's kind of like bringing a gun to a knife fight, right? Because you can launch to that list and you can rank new products on page one of Amazon. And then you can also use your list to get reviews in a white hat way that's compliant with Amazon's TOS. Okay, so bring a knife to a gunfight. It kind of reminds me of that that old school Indiana Jones movie. I'm dating myself, but there's that bad guy who's brandishing like the swords, and the Indy, he just looks at the guy. He pulls out his gun, right? What does he do? He just shoots the guy dead, right? So having a brand, building an audience, building a list is more critical than ever. It's almost like an unfair competition that you can bring. And then the fact that you drive external traffic onto Amazon, Amazon really likes that because you're bringing in new customers for them. And then, if Amazon can capture them as a prime customer, they spend thousands of dollars on Amazon every year. So they place more weight when you drive external traffic that drives sales. And then going back to Chris Davey again, he shared that branding is very important for him and his business because his brand is like a roadmap that helps him decide what products to launch to market. So he can actually map out his product portfolio based on what products will complement his brand and what products to avoid. And then also in terms of selling your business, I learned from Corin Woodmass, the FBA broker, having a tight brand of products helps you get a higher multiple if you decide to sell your business, according to Corin. Okay. And then he says, on the other hand, if you only have like a hero product that generates the lion's share of sales and some of the other minor products that just like trickle in, that's not very attractive to buyers. So the takeaway from this was that building a brand to beat your competitors and sell for a higher multiple, that's very critical today. I don't know if you have anything to add to that in terms, with your experience with, M&A and stuff. Like, is branding, does it affect selling a business at all?
I guess it depends on the buyer and it depends on what they're going to try to do with it. Like if they're just trying to buy revenue and just maybe consolidate it with other revenue and it's just purely Amazon, brands might not be as sensitive about the brand. But I think those that are trying to really build maybe third-party traffic, trying to grow, it also depends maybe if the buyer is also looking for the team, is looking for that to be their main brand. Do they have other brands already? Is this something they're trying to do long term? So, but most of nobody's gonna say it's not good to have the brand, but some people sometimes when we look at things with my Alpha Rock hat on is we're maybe looking more for the ranking and the velocity. But of course, the brand helps, is for sure.
The next big takeaway that I noticed is that for keywords, for PPC, right, for advertising, pay-per-click campaigns on Amazon, you really need to find a balance of data with common sense so you don't have to pay the idiot tax. Okay, so when it comes to Amazon sponsored search, like many of the people out there, including myself, sometimes we struggle to run profitable PPC campaigns, right? So I spoke with Stefano Starkel. He's a 7-figure Amazon seller and founder of Zon Tools. And then Stefano shared that his strategy in the initial 6 to 12 months of running a PPC campaign, his aim is to only break even. And then his goal during this time is to mine the valuable keyword data from Amazon for search terms that convert. So the reason in terms of like profitability is the lack of market data, and Amazon is a pay-to-play game. So the more you pay in PPC, he finds is the better the ranking of your product. And then only after this initial 6 to 12 month period will Stefano decide whether to shift the aim from break even to profitability. And then also when it comes to keyword selection, he recommends that you use your brain, okay, and not just relying on a formula based on number of clicks, conversion rate, ACoS, etc. He says that every week you gotta download your search term report, you gotta manually review each keyword to decide if it's relevant or not. So in other words, I'm not gonna curse, but he says to focus on FBA keywords that make sense when people search for your product, rather than diluting your budget across like less relevant keywords with low conversion rates and then wasting your money and dragging down your conversion rate at the same time, and then you'll be paying the idiot tax. Okay. And another 7-figure seller, Dave Bryant, he also he shared a similar strategy. When I interviewed him, I asked him how does he increase his profitability in his business with PPC, and then he shared that he cuts out 80% of potential keywords and focuses on only 2 to 3 keywords for his PPC campaigns to get a higher ROI, a return on investment. So 80-20 rule, focus on the most relevant, the FES search terms by using your brain to decide whether or not they're relevant. Don't just try to rely on some formula. And then also I noticed another big takeaway is when interviewing these seven-figure sellers, like the number one quote that was repeated over and over again was Peter Drucker's quote, whatever gets measured gets managed. Okay, so Chris Davey's products have over 30% margin. And he says that you should ask yourself if your product has enough margin per PPC. If you do, then you can afford to outspend your competition. You can buy your way to the top. The key is that Chris, he knows his numbers. Okay, so whatever gets measured gets managed. And then Chris Rawlings, a seven-figure Amazon seller, he shared that now he gets super granular when launching a new product. So every day, he and his team, they're tracking all the metrics in a 35-day honeymoon period. How many rebates are given out, how many reviews they're getting, their sales numbers, all of these nitty-gritty, all of these numbers, he gets super granular. And then Robin Johnson, also a seven-figure seller, she also tightly tracks her Amazon product conversion rates. So every week she pulls her Amazon session reports and studies them to learn what's working well and what's not. And then I also noticed that you can automate this process by using tools such as Seller Board to track your sales and SentryKit to track keyword ranking and monitor your listings to save you tons of time. And, John Cavendish, he shared that when selling internationally, you have to keep an eye on your Amazon fees to bring your international sales revenue back to your home country and home currency. So John Cavendish is a seven-figure seller selling in Amazon EU. And in fact, when it comes to this, I made this mistake the first year when I sold internationally. When I used Amazon's default currency exchange and money transfer service, I mistakenly thought that they would be a good option. And then later, I discovered at the end of the year when I was reviewing the books with my bookkeeper, we had wasted thousands of dollars in exchange fees and money transfer fees paid to Amazon because Amazon was charging almost 3.9% in fees. Yeah. So they're crazy, right? So if I were to give myself advice when starting to sell internationally and bringing these revenues back home, I would recommend to use a payment transfer service, like Ping Pong, for example, to lower these fees from 3.9% to 1% or even lower. So, just by doing that alone, you can save thousands of dollars a year rather than using, Amazon's currency exchange and money wire services. But the key thing is, again, Peter Drucker, whatever gets measured gets managed.
Yep, totally agreed. We're really giving you're giving amazing value here. It's
Yeah. The audience, they're welcome to check out the Seven-Figure Seller Summit, sure. To check out the full sessions. But if, because of time, if we just talk about one more, I really want to talk a little bit about selling a business because I think that's the end game. That's, I've read, quotes saying that, like half of the money that sellers make is actually from the exit. So, nowadays, you got to be very smart selling a business to get a higher multiple. And then, back in like 2016, if you were to say that you want to sell an Amazon business, people thought you're probably crazy, right? Who in their right mind would buy an Amazon business? But now the landscape has shifted significantly. More and more Amazon businesses are considered legitimate investment vehicles, and even investors, they're getting in the action, from retirees to institutional investors, right? So, but it's not just roses, for example, because I learned from Corin Woodmass, the FBA broker, there's actually an abundance of Amazon businesses on the market today. And then there's only a 23% sell-through rate, according to Corin. So that means that less than 1 in 4 Amazon businesses that go to market are actually sold. And in other words, there's more sellers than buyers on the market today. So I asked, what can you do to increase the chances of selling and get a higher multiple, be one of those 4, right? That 25%. So I asked you, Mike. I don't know if you remember in your interview. You work on the buy side at Alpha Rock, right? I asked you as well. The same question, and maybe I'll save your answer for the end. So you can they can hear it from you. But before we get to you, I talked to a couple other sellers. Mike Jackness, Nate Ginsburg, each of these guys, they sold their Amazon business for almost 7 figures or more. Number one, you need a tightly focused brand portfolio of products. Again, not just a hero product and less scattered products. The products should be appealing to a common target audience, and they should complement each other. Also, net margins. According to them, buyers like to see net profit margins of 30% or higher. Thin margins are not attractive to buyers and may cause your business to be skipped over. And in addition, buyers like to see some diversification of sales away from Amazon, at least 30%. So it's less risky for them. You don't have all your eggs in one basket, right? So this can be in the form of selling on different platforms, such as selling on your own website, Walmart, etc., or in different marketplaces, such as Europe. But it can't just be like one product that's amounting to 1% of sales. It has to be at least 30%, to be substantial. And then there were a couple other things as well, but Mike, why don't you weigh in on that as well? Because you gave some really great nuggets in your interview as well.
I think Alpha Rock's a little bit different than some other buyers where the strategy at Alpha Rock is purely Amazon businesses, Amazon revenue. I don't think which is opposite to what maybe others, and I know other people on the show said on your summit said, but we're looking to get more revenue, and we're consolidating, and sometimes we even combine the accounts and things like that. But what I would say, also having clean books, we also look for a little bit more than, I think a lot of people selling their business do it less than a year. I think you need at least a year of history. I don't know if other people in your summit said so, but we want a little bit more track history if possible. We don't want too much seasonality usually. We don't pick certain categories. We want long-term evergreen products. Boring stuff is usually is not sexy, but better. I guess that goes into profitability, like you talked about. With the others, those are some of the highlights I'd say.
Yeah, excellent. And then one other thing that I really like that you shared, Mike, is that give them something that they can improve on, right? Just give them some upside to your business that the buyer can take action on, and then this can increase your chances of selling your business, and also increase the multiple. And that came from you. That came from you.
I mean, because the buyer, if they see it's totally perfect, they want to see something that they can fix. Usually.
Yeah. And then I remember the example you gave is that you may be able to have a few more vetted products that you haven't been able to develop because, for example, lack of cash flow, right? Mm-hmm. But the buyer, they can come in, they can get these products manufactured from your suppliers and sold immediately to boost sales, right? So that's a quick win for them. And then I really like that takeaway that you shared. So yeah, I mean, those would be some of the top tips. Not only selling a business, but just the mindset. Getting around excuses, building your team, building a brand. Using your brain when it comes to PPC, so you don't pay the idiot tax, and also number one quote: whatever gets measured gets managed. That on a high level, that's what I learned from the 7-Figure Seller Summit. But I mean, this is only the tip of the iceberg. We have probably 20 hours of interviews if you want to check it out.
Yeah, you have so much value there. I mean, the names are amazing, and the experience and the people, and we've been recommending it in our newsletters and in our social media. So definitely, if you guys haven't checked out Gary's 7-Figure Seller Summit, definitely take a look, and we'll link to it in the show notes as well, so it's people can find it right away.
Yeah, perfect. And then I think that especially right now, we're recording this during the whole pandemic. A lot of people, they're kind of stuck at home. Maybe they're binging on Netflix and not being the most productive person. I'm guilty of that as well. But I think that right now it's a great opportunity to stop binging on Netflix and start surrounding yourself with successful entrepreneurs like Mike and all these other 7-figure sellers and level up your business. So I recommend you check it out, 7figuresellersummit.com. Awesome.
Thanks so much, Gary, for sharing, man. It's really, really appreciated that you really gave amazing value just on this. So there's obviously so much more. If everybody's enjoying this one, there's only that much and more with what Gary has. All right, man.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you, Mike, for having me. It's been a pleasure. And then, I'm happy to help however I can.
No, I appreciate it, man. And I hope to catch up with you soon. I mean, in real life. I don't know when that's gonna be, man. Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. But I mean, at least we can do this,
Yeah, I mean,
online.
it's
At least
the
we can
power of the
still
internet.
connect with each other. Yeah,
Awesome. Okay.
excellent.